NetsBoy, so let's hear what he has to say. His name is NetsBoy, he thinks the world is all over when the Nets just can't play. What up, Net fans? NetsBoy here, bringing your latest in your Brooklyn Nets news. All right, so let's dive right in. It's currently August 8th. The NBA restart has been more than halfway complete. I wanted to do a NetsBoy video actually a couple days ago prior to the Kings game, but courtesy of that tropical storm that we had in the tri-state area, NetsBoy's been out of power for 4 days now. And that's why I'm actually broadcasting, is that even the right word to use? Recording the video remotely, well, it's always remote, from a different area. I am currently on the road taking care of some personal and business matters, so that's why if you look around, I am not in my regular apartment. I am in a different place, but I brought my stuff and I said, you know what? I got to get a NetsBoy video done, all right? I wanted to do one after 4 games into the restart. It's been 5 games, brought the stuff. I said, I got to do it. I'll take some time out of my busy schedule just to do a short video. So that's what this is. So if you were wondering where the hell I am, that's because I'm not where I normally am. It's not the point. So let's dive right in. Like I said, so 5 games into the 8-game restart, and I have to say that this is better than I thought could possibly be for this Nets team. They are 3-2 in the restart, including a great win against the Milwaukee Bucks when they didn't have LeVert, Joe Harris, or Jared Allen playing. And of course, they didn't have any of the regular guys as well that weren't coming down to the restart anyway. And they still managed to beat the Bucks. So we're going to go over all that and what it means so far for the Nets and what could happen moving forward. So the restart starts, right? And it started off with a tough loss against the Magic. And that was a tough one because the Magic are the team the Nets are really competing, right? Like the Wizards and the Magic are the 2 teams the Nets really have to focus on because the Magic going into the bubble was the half game behind the Nets, and the Wizards were like about 5 games back, and we all know the whole stipulations between being within 4 games and having a play-in tournament thing. So it was tough. The Magic looked great, and the Nets just looked bad. The Magic were, basically dominated the whole game. It was just one of those things where you just have to chalk it up and say the Magic were the better team. Let's move on. So that didn't shock me. But then the Nets bounced back and had a big win against the Wizards that they needed to. Ultimately, at that point, basically locking them into the playoffs, even though it wasn't official. But we all knew the Wizards weren't going to win many games without Bradley Beal or John Wall or Bertans. The Nets beat the Wizards, a big win for them. Jared Allen and Joe Harris and Karis LeVert combined for 82 points, I think, or 83 points, and like that's what they need. Like that's what you need this team to do. Without Dinwiddie, without DeAndre Jordan, without Kyrie Irving, without Taurean Prince, without obviously Kevin Durant, you need the 3 other guys of Allen, LeVert, and Harris to carry the team, and they did in that game against the Wizards, and the Nets managed to win that game, which was a huge win. And so on and so forth. And so now you're feeling better about, okay, so the Nets got into the playoffs almost certainly with that win. And then they go up against the Bucks. And you could tell that Jacques Vaughn was just like, you know what? We got no chance. We play the Celtics the next day. This is the first game of a back-to-back. Let me just rest Jared Allen, Joe Harris, and Karis LeVert. And I remember I read that they weren't playing. I'm like, this is going to be the ugliest game in the history of basketball. But in the back of my mind, I started saying, I think I should bet on the spread. Now, I never thought about taking the money line. I ended up not betting anything because I've learned my lesson about betting on the Nets, with the dumb bets I made in the past. So I said, even though back in my mind, I'm like, I think the Nets might actually cover this 19-point spread that they have. But I said, but you know what? I'm not going to risk it. I've already risked enough with this team. But in the back of my mind, I'm like, But I never would have expected them to actually win. But sure enough, by some crazy miracle, Timothy Luwawa-Cabarrot played amazing. Chris Chiozza played amazing. Tyler Johnson played amazing. Kurucs played well. It was just a great team effort. Yes, look, the Bucks rested Adetokounmpo and Chris Middleton in that second half, but that was just because they were outplayed completely in the first half. The Nets basically had the lead from the beginning of the game, and they're up by 10 going into the halftime. And I think Mike Budenholzer's like, you know what? There's no reason to try to stress this team out against against the Nets. We're going to have the number one seed anyway. We just need to win one or two more games. Let me just rest these guys. But that still doesn't change the fact is the Nets literally did not have their top 5 players playing in this game. Top 6, really, right? No Durant, no Kyrie, no Dinwiddie, no LeVert, no Harris, no Jared Allen. Those are like the 6 best players on the Nets, and they still managed to beat the Bucks. So I don't want to hear these, anti-Nets naysayers out there going out there saying like, oh, well, the Bucks didn't play, Adetokounmpo or Chris Middleton in the second half, so that's why the Nets won. The Nets didn't. The Nets only had one player who's been in the rotation all year playing for them, and that was actually no, they didn't, because Luwawa-Cabarrot didn't play all year. He cracked the rotation early on, but he wasn't part of the rotation early on. Same thing with Kurucs. So you can make an argument there was not one true rotational player on the Nets, all right, in that game. They had people like Dante Hall and Anderson. What's his name? Justin Anderson? Jason Anderson? Something Anderson? I don't even remember his name. See, irrelevant people. Chris Chiozas. And we got to see a glimpse of Jamal Crawford, who then immediately got hurt. So that's a very unfortunate circumstances, because I know a lot of Net fans are excited to see what Jamal Crawford can bring to this team. Maybe he could play his way onto the roster next year, but appears to be a hamstring injury. He may not return until maybe the actual playoffs. They don't really know. Remember, he's 40 years old. He's up there. It was just a very unfortunate situation, so who knows what's going to happen with him. But the point is, great win by the Nets. I couldn't even believe it. And what made this so frustrating, these last 3 games, the Bucks, and then the Celtics game, which was a disaster. They got completely destroyed. And then more recently, the Kings game, which was last night, which they played great. I couldn't watch any of them because I had no power. I missed all 3 of those games because the power was out in my apartment, and I was just trying to follow along on my phone in the darkness, trying to figure out what happened. So I didn't even know what happened, and I'm really upset about the Bucks game. I had no idea how the Nets won that game. I'm seeing the score. I'm like, what is going on? What is going on? Are they going to hold on to win? I can't believe this. And then I saw that they won, and I'm like, what? How? So I had to do a bunch of research, but it's just been really frustrating because I literally have not been able to watch the last 3 games. I've only been able to watch highlights, followed on my phone, and all this stuff. But either way, great win against the Bucks. Like I said, then they played the Celtics, got completely blown out, which was funny because the whole point was they're supposed to rest against the Bucks so they can play the Celtics harder, whatever. But then they had a huge win against the Kings, a game that I thought they should have had the potential to win. And by beating the Kings, which they basically dominated that game as well, great performances by Joe Harris and Karis LeVert and Jared Allen, again, the 3 main guys, the Nets clinched the playoffs and officially eliminated the Wizards. The Wizards cannot, even if the Nets lose their last 3 games and the Wizards win the last 3 games, they cannot catch the Nets for the A seed to be in the play-in. So no matter what, the Nets are officially back in the playoffs. Woo! So that is great. And with that win, with the wins that they had against the Bucks and now the Kings, they're now a game and a half up on the Magic, which 3 to go, which means the Magic number is 2 for the Nets to clinch the 7 seed. So very, very exciting things going on here now. But here's the truth of the matter. I don't know if I really want the Nets to get the 7 seed now. Originally, I wanted them to be the 7 seed because I felt that the Raptors would be an easier matchup than the Bucks. Once again, I don't expect the Nets to win more than 1 game against either team in a best of 7 series. But I just thought they had more of a chance. But watching the way Milwaukee has played in the bubble, I think that Milwaukee is like 3-2, 2-3 or something like that, or 3-2. I don't know. They haven't played well. And the Raptors playing the exact opposite, look almost unbeatable. I'm kind of nervous. It seems like this whole no fans thing in the bubble really is helping teams that are very well coached, like the Raptors. I mean, Nick Nurse is one of the best coaches around. And I think it's also helped the Nets, too, because say what you want about Jacques Vaughn, he seems like he gets a lot out of the players, similar to the way Kenny Atkinson did. So I think when it's all said and done, maybe these lack of fans things have helped certain teams. I think the Nets are one of them, but so are the Raptors. So I still would like the Nets to be the 7th seed. I just think it sounds better. But after they beat the Bucks and the way they were able to play hand with the Bucks, I almost want them to play the Bucks in the first round. But once again, I think this is kind of a moot point because no matter what, the Nets aren't going to win the first series. It's just that I want them to be competitive, and I feel like they got maybe more of a shot to be competitive against the Bucks. Because I think they also beat the Bucks earlier this year as well, if I remember, before the coronavirus break and stuff like that. Like, I think they beat them as well, but they also beat the Raptors. So I don't know, but the point is they're a game and a half up on the Magic, which means that moving forward, there's some big games for the Nets. So let's take a look at that now, starting with the Clippers tomorrow night. I expect that to be a loss for the Nets. It's just anticipated. The Clippers are one of the best teams around, so that should be a loss. But then the next game after that is the big game. It's the Nets against the Magic for the second time. That game is going to decide the 7th seed. I'm almost certain of it. Unless the Magic lose out, which is a possibility because the Magic have the Celtics, the Nets, and then the Pelicans. And then the Nets have the Clippers, the Magic, and then they end against the Trailblazers. So anything can happen, but I think that game, that Nets-Magic game, is going to decide who will be the 7th seed and who will be the 8th seed. If the Magic win, then I think the Magic are going to become the 7th seed because I don't see the Nets winning more than maybe one game these next 3 games, either against the Magic or the Trailblazers. Maybe they could beat both the Magic and the Trailblazers, and then if that's the case, the Nets would be the 7th seed because that would be 2 wins. But I don't see that happening. But I think that that game is going to be the huge game. Whoever wins that game, I think will be the 7th seed. Not necessarily true, because if that's the only game the Nets win and the Magic win the other 2 games, well then the Magic will jump the Nets. And if the Magic win that game, but the Nets win the other 2 games, then the Nets would be the same. You know what I'm saying? But I think that's the big game. That's that Tuesday. That's a game at 1 p.m. that I'm going to try my best to record and watch. I'm going to be working. I mean, these times are rough during the day, but whatever. And then, like I said, then they got the Trailblazers at the end. So I hope the Nets can get the 7th seed. At this point, I'm just glad they're going to be in the playoffs. I'm glad that they won 3 games. Remember, going into this, I said I expect them to win 2 at the most, and they've already won 3. So to me, this is already a success. And they've clinched the playoffs again. So I'm very pleased, very happy. Karis LeVert looks great. Jared Allen looks great. Joe Harris looks great. I've liked what I've seen from Tyler Johnson. Timothy Luwawa-Cabarrot looks good. I love what I've seen from Kurucs. I've loved what I've seen from this team. I love what I've seen from Chris Chiozza. I've loved everything. Even players like Dante Hall and Anderson have proven that they're not worthless. And that's always good to see. So it's exciting to see this team, exciting to see them play well. And I'm just very, very pleased with what I've seen so far. So there you have it. That is my first analysis of what I've seen through the first 5 games of the bubble. We'll see what happens with the next 3. Let me know what you guys think of what you've seen so far with this in the bubble, how pleased you've been with the Nets, with their big wins over the Bucks and clinching the playoffs again for the 2nd year in a row. And just, let me know what you think could happen moving forward. And who would you rather see in the playoffs? Would you rather see the Bucks or the Raptors? Because right now, I don't know. Originally, I wanted them to play the Raptors, but seeing what I've seen so far, I might be leaning more towards the Bucks. Who knows? So let me know what you guys think, and keep your eyes open for the next NetsBoy episode, which would probably be after the Portland game, so after the bubble, we're going into the playoffs, and we'll see. So keep your eyes open, and until then, this is NetsBoy, signing off.